Hello and welcome back to another episode. Now today I'm continuing my journey into the DVD collection, and today we're going to be looking at the letter S because we seem to have quite a few S's and even more T's, which I'll address in the next episode. So rather than trying to do S and T in one go, which is way too long, I'm just going to do the S's today. But before we do that, as with previous videos, I have a couple of insertions to make into previous parts of the DVD library. The first one is American Ultra. We got this over the Christmas period, and it's quite good. It's kind of like a cross between, I don't know, sort of Jason Bourne, the Cornetto trilogy movies, and Zombieland. In terms of tone, if that's what I mean. It's not as good as any of those, but it is pretty good. Plus, as well, it actually made me sort of have another look at Kristen Stewart. Hitherto, she's just been that girl from Twilight, but actually, she's quite good actually in this. And yeah, I would watch her in something else as well. Next, we have Bridge of Spies. This film was recommended to us by actually my wife's parents, and it's superb. It's about the Cold War, and cleverly, it is filmed in the same pace as a film from the sort of the 40s, 50s, 60s. It is that sort of feeling of a story that doesn't have to be sort of pushed along by special effects, for example, or explosions. It is a bit of a slow burn, but it's also as well a really good document of the period. For example, there are flash bulbs that are being dropped on the floor outside a courtroom, hearing the press with their cameras, one flash, drop the bulb, this kind of thing. Quite an interesting little detail that Steven Spielberg includes. And it's actually really quite funny, in so much as it highlights some of the absurdity that nation states go to in order to seem as though they're in charge, you know? So a good little film there as well. And finally, we added to the library Batman the Animated Series Parts 1 and 2. We're actually making our way through Volume 1 at the moment. Volume 2 obviously awaits. And then Volume 3 and 4 are a bit more expensive. These two were $5 each, and 3 and 4 might have to wait a little bit. But crucially, my wife is loving them, which I'm so happy about. I really am incredibly happy about, and I'll talk about that in another video. But let's dive in. Let's get stuck into the S's, shall we? So starting with SWAT, S.W.A.T. A fantastic film, a real guilty pleasure of mine, and one which it has a great soundtrack, but it also builds this little sort of SWAT universe, which is kind of like they're almost like the total elites of their universe, and they're a bit like Jedi in that sense as well, because they're a dark SWAT and you know, good SWAT and light SWAT, and it's good. It's a good fun film. Samuel L. Jackson is fantastic. A total guilty pleasure of mine. Next we have SW20, Star Wars. I don't know why it's catalogued like that in the backup, but it is, and of course I have Star Wars. Of course I do. It is so important. Next we have Sahara. Now Sahara is a film which I have a real soft spot for, actually. It's a film that when it first came out, people were sort of complaining and criticising it for being a sort of a wannabe Indiana Jones, but actually it's more than that in some respects. It is a bit light-hearted, it is a bit of a comedy, and unfortunately the author of the original book, Clive Cussler, wasn't involved in the production, or certainly didn't get his blessing, and so there weren't any follow-ups. But I really could have done with a follow-up to this, because yes, as I said, there were elements of comedy which were magnificent. There were elements of the adventure which were magnificent. But also, what was so refreshing was the triangle between the three main actors. Matthew McConaughey, Steve Zahn, and Penelope Cruz were fantastic. And Steve Zahn in particular stands out because, ironically, because he doesn't stand out. He's not trying to compete with his best friend in the shape of Dirk or Matthew McConaughey. And it's really nice to see a friendship actually between these two, as opposed to Steve at one point maybe taking a liking to Penelope Cruz and trying to steal it. There's none of that going on. It's a good fun film. In terms of just watching a movie, it's great. Santa Claus the Movie. Santa Claus the Movie is one of my firm favourites. Sadly, it's not one of my wife's. I would love to watch this more often, but she just can't stand it. I think Dudley Moore really freaks her out in the film. Saturday Night Fever, 30th anniversary, with the slipcover. Saving Mr. Banks, a film which I haven't yet watched, but my wife tells me is fantastic and we should watch soon, so we will be. Say Anything. That's a film that I haven't watched either, and I think it must be my wife's, I think. Scanner Darkly, or Scanner Darkly, is a very interesting film. It's almost like a filmic experiment. It's sort of cel-shaded, but based very much on captured footage. I think Robert Downey Jr. is in there. Certainly Keanu Reeves and some other people turn up. It is a dark movie, as the title I suppose implies. It's quite philosophical. Lots to do with privacy and human rights in that sense. It's a very interesting film. But crucially, it's like a visual experiment. It's very, very interesting. Scarface is a film which, a bit like so many others, like for example Star Wars or like Indiana Jones. You get to know certain scenes without ever seeing the film. So I'd already seen, for example, the say hello to my little friend kind of scene in pop culture previously. But when I finally watched Scarface, I understood the bombastic nature of Tony Montana, who wants his fucking human rights right now, right here, come on. It's a great film, a very clever film. And it's a film that made me want to go and play Grand Theft Auto Vice City straight away after I first saw it. If I had to keep one gangster movie from my collection, it would probably be this one, because it's it is sort of fiction, and so I can watch it and not be too sort of grossed out by some of the things that. I mean, I know this sort of stuff really does happen in real life in cartels, but I can watch it as a story. But also, actually, it's over the top. It's a bit silly. It's a bit GTA, and it's very macho. So I like it. It's fun. Schindler's List is not fun. It's a film actually which I probably saw. I first saw a clip of this far too early. I think my mum was watching it on TV, and I came into the room and saw an emaciated figure or something, and it just sort of stuck in my brain. And now, having watched it as an adult, it is obviously very harrowing, and Steven Spielberg does a great job of sort of going, the Holocaust was not a good thing. It wasn't fun, not a good idea, kind of thing. He really hammers it home, and the imagery it's understated but also masterful, if that's what I mean. So he as a filmmaker doesn't get in the way of the documentation of what occurred, but how he chooses to capture what he captures is very, very clever. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a fantastic and couldn't be more different than Schindler's List movie. Based on a series of graphic novels or extended comics, I suppose, from, I believe, a Canadian author based in Toronto. And the stories are set in Toronto, I think, so is the film, I believe. And it's just magnificent. If you're into gaming culture, if you're into kung fu movies, if you're into high school relationships, and if you're that person who's trying to get with the girl who's got all sorts of horrible baggage, you'll understand this film. And I've been there. I've sort of been there in one way or another. But the whole film starts off with the music. One of the I think it's the music from the beginning of Zelda: A Link to the Past, where the Triforce sort of floats in. I think that's it. Anyway, but it starts off with some Zelda music. I mean, how much more wonderful can you get? Fantastic special effects, great fighting. Edgar Wright obviously is the director of the Cornetto trilogy, and therefore is very witty with his editing, and it has some really clever things to say about, for example, self-respect. This kind of thing. So I like it. Scrooged. That is a family favourite. Both my wife and I both love it at Christmas time. A really interesting take on the Charles Dickens classic. Not as good as the Muppets movie, but very, very clever. And the only downside really is the fact that Bill Murray really layers it on thick at the end in terms of his conversion. It's a bit cheesy, but I suppose that's the whole point of the film. It is all about TV culture and cheese in that sense, and selling cheese. Next we have Seven, or Seven. Seven is a film which had such an impact on me when I first saw it. It is a dark fairy tale. We never quite know what city these people are working in. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman as the policeman, but David Fincher as the director crafts such an awesomely dark vision and an unfolding criminal story in this film that it's been copied many times since, and it'll never really be topped in terms of its bleakness. It's such a grim film, but also a very, very clever film. And David Fincher is one of my top, probably my top five, certainly, filmmakers, if not my top three. Secret Window, starring Johnny Depp, is a film which is good. It's quite cool. It's quite scary, I suppose, in some respects. Johnny Depp does an okay performance in it. I won't give away the twist, but that's the kind of the point, is that there is sort of like this does suffer from being very much a Stephen King film. It feels Stephen Kingy. It feels a little bit like The Dreamcatcher and all this kind of thing. So, good, passable, 96 minutes of horror. I'll watch it. The Secretary, wow. My wife showed me this film, and it's a bit sort of got a bit hot in the collar. Serenity, a film which I first saw, having borrowed it from my housemate. When I first watched it in my early 20s, it made me feel like I did the first time I saw Star Wars, A New Hope. It is magnificent. The follow-up to the TV series, a bit of a shame that they had to retrograde the characters' relationships from the TV series. The place that they're in at the end of the TV series is not the same as the place that they're in at the beginning of the movie, but they had to do that for the movie audiences who hadn't seen the TV show. But I don't quite like the way it doesn't quite mesh. I wish it meshed a bit more than it does, but still magnificent. Severance. If you've ever been on a hideous bonding exercise with work colleagues, you'll like Severance. It's a British comedy horror, I guess. Danny Dyer is passable in it. Even he is passable in it. But basically, people start getting bumped off in the woods. It's good. Shakespeare in Love was a film which I adored in my teens. I think I was in love with the idea of being in love, and Shakespeare in Love really delivered that. It's also a great a great ensemble cast in terms of British cinema, and there's a wonderful, I'm sure there's more than one, but there's one Easter egg that really stands out to me, and that is where you have, what's his name? The young boy is playing with the rats basically outside in the street. He names himself. He says, "My name is blah blah blah." I can't remember what his name is now. But he will go on to be the author of a play called The Duchess of Malfi, which is a really grim and bloody and violent play. And it's so cool that he's there mucking about with rats and going, "Oh, I love it when the blood comes." It's a little English teacher's Easter egg, I'm sure. I'm sure there will be various people, professors and teachers who have gone, "Oh, it's him," at that point. But it's a great film. I love it. A really clever way to show the writing of Shakespeare is inspired, apparently, by falling in love. Shattered Glass is a film which really plays to Hayden Christensen's strengths. In the Star Wars prequels, obviously, he was very famously quite wooden. And this film, his woodenness really is an asset. It is all about him trying to wriggle out of some lies. Let's just leave it there, shall we? He's a writer, and he's been writing for a very reputable magazine in the US, and he's a liar as well. Or is he a liar? Is he convincing himself that he's it's a great film. It's well worth watching, if only once. It's pretty good. Shaun of the Dead, the first of the Cornetto trilogy, probably, in my opinion, the best, if not second best, after Hot Fuzz. The World's End is never going to be in my top two, I'm afraid, of those three films. But then again, something has to come third, and it did, both literally and does figuratively. Sherlock Holmes. Shaun of the Dead, incidentally, as well. Sorry, by the way. It was my first real zombie. I liked the way that they injected zombies into British society. So that's what I'm getting at. My first real sort of zombie fantasy in Britain film. Now, since then, we've had Cockneys versus zombies and other things, but Shaun of the Dead did it really, really well. Again, Edgar Wright, magnificent. Editing, wonderful editing. Sherlock Holmes, Robert Downey Jr. From oh God, what's it, Guy Ritchie, but starring Robert Downey Jr. And it's good. I like it. There's an awful lot of sort of cheeky, chappy Guy Ritchie's obsession with Cockneys and inner city London going on, but it is pretty good. The second film, though, is where Guy Ritchie's obsession with inner city London and Cockneys, and also actually the filmmaking process, really gets in the way. There's one scene in particular in the second film where he sort of it's basically a stylized camera sequence where they're running away from a military store, and there's cannons going off, there's trees exploding. If you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Which I found was really off-putting. I found it really out of place. And then for the whole film, in that one, spoiler alert, for the whole film to end up with a really disappointing World War One theme at the end, it's such a letdown. You know, it's not like we've already seen that in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or anything else. So a huge letdown for the second one, but the first one pretty good. But I own them both because I am a completionist, much to my shame. Shrooms is a fantastic British horror film. Stars some of my favourite sort of B-list British actors. A bunch of kids, teenagers going into the woods to try and get high, and horror ensues. It's fantastic. Silent Hill, very good. I like it. I like the Silent Hill games. Now that I'm actually playing them. But I saw the film before I played the games. So in that sense, the film was my first exposure really to Silent Hill as a more than just a couple of photographs and a name. And I like it. I really do. I like the approach of the director. I like the attitude of the actors and the extras, the way that they're talking about their approach. I like it. There is integrity there, which even if it doesn't fit in plug in nicely with the games, you can respect. In the second film, though, not much in the way of integrity. It's just basically, you remember this from the games? Here you go. You remember this from the games? Here you go. Remember this from the games? Here you go. And then, boo! Every now and then. It really does lack integrity. So Revelations, I hate. Actually, I really don't like it at all, even though it's rated R. But I own it because I am a completionist, and I'm obsessed with that. Sin City, and for some reason Sin City 2 isn't in here, but we do own both of them. Sin City obviously is the best of the two. When it first came out, it was visually stunning, and my wife loves the character of Marv. In the second film, I love the character of Eva Green. What's her name again? I don't know, but Eva Green. No, but in the first one, it's a very good film noir tale. They took Frank Miller's visuals and slapped them on the screen, and it's one of those films actually where Robert Rodriguez again doesn't get in the way of his own movie. There's so many directors who do that, and in this case, the film is breathing and living for itself. It's not just about his vision and his style or something, and that's probably because he's adapting someone else's work. Singing in the Rain, a fantastic film. I first saw it only a couple of years ago, thanks to my wife. Very, very clever in terms of its the visuals and the set pieces and the dancing, but also actually the setting of Hollywood moving into the talkies, away from just black and white silent films. Very clever. Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow is a film which I own because it is visually fascinating. It is very much again, a bit like Scanner Darkly. It's a visual experiment. Pretty much everything in the movie is computer generated, with the exception of Jude Law and Angelina Jolie and this kind of thing. It doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up really to today's standards in terms of computer generated visuals, but it is nonetheless fascinating. And in the same way that I own, for example, Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, I also own this because I appreciate what they were trying to do. Sleepy Hollow is fantastic. Yes, I know it doesn't quite follow, or in fact it really doesn't follow the story of the original story, but it is very good. It's visually lush. Tim Burton really at his best. Again, possibly because he's sort of partially adapting someone else's work. That said, that doesn't really hold up when you look at some of his latest movies. But anyway, here it works. Ichabod Crane in his sort of crazy goggles, the way the blood is splattered in this almost orange red across the screen. Again, the ensemble cast, the set design, the set pieces, the whole film is fantastic. A real atmospheric romp, and Christina Ricci is also fantastic as well. Slumdog Millionaire is a film which I'm yet to see. I really should watch it, but we got it because I love the director, I love the premise, and it got Best Picture in its year at the Academy Awards. So we just need to watch it. Next we have Snakes on a Plane. This is a film which I really should, technically I suppose I should dislike it, because it was being sold to us as this will be a classic. This will be a cult classic movie, and you're going to buy it, you're going to watch it, and you're going to agree that this is a cult classic. And even though I don't think it is technically a cult classic, I think some people, it hasn't got quite the following that it could have. It is very close, and Samuel Jackson is just magnificent in this film. Next we have Son of Rambo, and this movie is one which I didn't watch for the longest time, but my wife was insisting that I'd like it, and I did. It's a film about boyhood, it's about different types of childhoods, it's about friendship and it's a real film. It's a film about what it's like to grow up and what it's like to have friends and to have troubles with your family. So, for example, social workers and this kind of thing. And Son of Rambo is this fantasy that this guy wants to be the son of Rambo, and I like it. I don't want to spoil it, but it is good. It's a good heart-touching British film. Very British, but very lovely. Space Jam. Space Jam isn't even a guilty pleasure. It is just total pleasure for me. It's a film which I watched on video until the point where the VHS just crumbled, basically. And rewatching it on DVD when I first got it, I was amazed at how much I recalled. I just burned this movie onto my brain, and I love it. Speed is another film which I love, and it is a film which my wife loves because she loves Keanu Reeves at that point and now, but he had a bit in the middle where she doesn't like him. But she really likes him in this film. Also, Jeff Daniels is doing a great job as the sidekick. Keanu Reeves actually really steps out as a physical leading man. He puts his body on the line as he would go on to in The Matrix. But in this film, you've also got a fantastic backup in the shape of Dennis Hopper as the cop gone bad, and also obviously Sandra Bullock as well driving the bus. Spirited Away. You've got to watch it. If you haven't watched it, you've just got to watch it. Simple as that. Simple as that. A bit like Star Wars. Not really worth trying to explain it. Spriggan the Movie is a film, on the other hand, is a film which needs explaining. I want someone to explain this, because it's a film which kind of tells you, I'm worth watching, I am a groundbreaking anime. Spirited Away doesn't tell you that, really, but Spriggan sort of has this sort of boisterousness about it. It's good, it's just not as good as I think it thinks it is. So, but I like it. I like it anyway, but it's not as good as Spirited Away. Now here we have Star Trek, then Star Trek First Contact, Star Trek Beyond, Star Trek Into Darkness. I'll talk about the Abrams trilogy, as it were. The first film, I think, was very, very clever. And actually, last night, I was reading a prequel story. There's actually a Star Trek countdown, some comics that lead into the first movie, which I'm glad they didn't include any of that in the movie, because there's just too many references to The Next Generation in there. But anyway, great, really very clever, very emotional opening in terms of one man sacrificing himself for his crew and his son. But also, we loved, both my wife and I, not only were we struck by the emotions, but also, we were struck by the emotions in a Star Trek movie. I mean, I love Star Trek, I always have, but my wife was like, what? I'm crying. But also, the way that this film pans out is such that, yes, it's an alternate timeline, but it can only have happened if previous Star Trek has already happened. So the TV series and the movies that we've already seen have to have happened in order to get us pretty much to this point here. It is a stupendously clever thing to do, respecting the old canon but forging ahead in a new direction. The second movie was dismal though. I had such high hopes for it. I really loved the trailers, and actually if you'd asked me when they came out of the cinema, I would have gone, yeah, they did it, they've done it again. But actually, The more I think about it, the more I think no, they didn't, because they didn't have to do Khan, and they shouldn't have done Khan. They shouldn't have touched Khan, really. They could have done something else though. If they called this guy something else, a different name, in the shape of Benedict Cumberbatch, then actually it would work, I think, better. Still, it's a great film. It's a great visual feast and spectacle, but it's got an awful lot of throwbacks to the first movie. So the sort of the equivalent of the space jump, and other bits and bobs, other set pieces. So when it came to the third one, Star Trek Beyond, I was really pleased that they dropped J.J. Abrams as director. Or rather, sorry, no, he went on to do Star Trek, and he did a great job in Episode 7, I think. Star Wars. So he went on to do Star Wars and did a great job in Episode 7. But he was producing this and left it, for example, in the hands of other people. The director, is it Donnie Yen? Oh, sorry. Is it Jason? Oh, I'll put the name on the screen if I remember. But anyway, he, from the Fast and the Furious movies, does a wonderful job picking up the reins from Abrams. But also, actually, for example, we have Simon Pegg involved in writing this as effectively part of a 50th year celebration of Star Trek, and it works. It really does work. The third movie feels like an elongated Star Trek episode. Also has lots of really useful Easter eggs and funky things thrown in there that remind you of why you love Star Trek when it's not a movie franchise. And actually, even in that, I think there's even the line, life has got a bit episodic, and I was like, oh yeah, very clever. Star Trek First Contact, let's go back up there, is probably my favourite Star Trek film, though, of all of them, because it has elements which I love, all the different elements I love about Star Trek. It has serious aspirations for the future, it has over-the-top bad guys in the shape of the Borg, it has high stakes, it has a superb sort of soundtrack, very sort of emotional, bugles and things. And it has also a vision of how the world steps into the galaxy in the shape of Zefram Cochrane and the Phoenix ship. So and I like the way that was also picked up by the Enterprise TV series. There's an episode that sort of follows up on this film, in there. So it's probably my favourite of the Star Trek films. And we do have others, but for some reason they're not turning up in this library. Here we have Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, and also obviously all the other Star Wars movies. They're all magnificent. I'm not going to go into that because I don't want this video to be like an hour long. But Star Wars The Clone Wars Volume 1 and 2, from the same studio I think that brought you Samurai Jack, is superb. Again, I appreciate good quality animation. I also appreciate good quality sort of Japanese-ish animation, and I appreciate it when storytelling is able to be done using visuals as much as words. And in some respects, some of the best episodes of Clone Wars have almost no words at all. It's all just visuals, and so much better than the Clone Wars movie, and frankly the computer animated or generated 3D model version of Clone Wars that you see in some of the other TV shows. Stardust, fantastic, another British ensemble cast movie. Neil Gaiman as the writer, a guy who I really respect, and I love some of his stuff, like his Doctor Who episode from a couple of years ago where the TARDIS becomes a woman. Magnificent. And in the case of Stardust, some similar themes: a physical object becoming a woman, falling in love with having conversations with the woman. Anyway, fantastic, loads of fun, and Michelle Pfeiffer. He's a great villain, really great villain in that one. Stargate. Yep. Starship Troopers. It's okay. It's not as good as some, it's not as good as, say, RoboCop or some other films along those lines. But Steam Boy is another one of those animes. But no, sorry, I'll go back. Starship Troopers. The reason why I don't like it is because of some of the outdated sexual politics in it, and also some of the effects just don't hold up anymore. There you go. I've explained myself. Steam Boy is another one of those animes which seems to think it's a groundbreaking visual feast, and it is kind of, but the visual feast sort of gets in the way of the story. Again, I own it because I want to rewatch it and soak it in again. I really appreciate some of the steampunkishness of it, hence Steam Boy, I suppose. but it's not as understatedly brilliant as, for example, Spirited Away. But then again, they can't all be Spirited Away. So Steam Boy is well worth watching. Stephen Merchant, Hello Ladies, live. Actually, my wife really likes that one for some reason. Stigmata is a great little grungy horror movie. If you're into sort of Catholic kind of conspiracy theory horror with a little bit of sort of, you know, hauntedness thrown in, a little bit of The Exorcist or whatever kind of vibe, it's well worth watching. Slightly naff ending, but pretty good. Gabriel Byrne does a wonderful job as a priest in it. Stop It and Tidy Up. If you don't know what it is, you're missing out. Stop It and Tidy Up. Look it up. Go and look on YouTube. Look on YouTube. When you're finished here, look for Stop It and Tidy Up. It's well worth it. Stormbreaker. Stranger Than Fiction. Fantastic. And actually a film where Will is bearable. Again, my wife often cannot stand him. But actually, I quite like him. But she avoids all sorts of films like Talladega Nights and this kind of thing. She can't stand watching them. But actually, I do like it, and I also like the support. Again, the supporting cast in this film is great. Dustin Hoffman does a wonderful supporting role in this. Street Fighter Assassin's Fist I have reviewed in a previous video, so go and watch that video. Good though, I like it. I like the way they captured Street Fighter in a series of episodes, which now, in this instance, are also one long movie. Strictly Ballroom. I was such a mopey, pathetic teenager at one point when I was watching this film over and over again, just going, "Oh, I just want to have this sort of wonderful just time learning to dance with someone, with my love." I did go through a bit of a phase where I just wanted to. I think I wanted to meet someone who could teach me how to, you know, to dance the way that she teaches him how to dance in that film. Studio Ghibli Collection 17, Ponyo. Ponyo is very nice, a very lovely Studio Ghibli film. Sucker Punch took me for a sucker. That's for sure. I was hoping for so much from this film. The visuals look fascinating, but that's really all it is, just a series of visuals that make no actual sense. And even though people told me that was the case, I didn't believe them. I thought, well, how can it not make any sense? I don't understand. But you watch it and you're like, no, this makes no sense. But it's still visually interesting, and that's why I own it. Suffragette is a film. It is a film, and it's a good film. It's a film with an agenda. You can tell what that agenda is from the title, but it delivers it in a way which doesn't just force it down your throat. It does overlook certain things for its own convenience, in terms of, for example, the status of men in society at the time. For example, many men couldn't vote either, but nonetheless, I'll put that to one side. It is a good film. I like it. Sunshine is one of my favourite sci-fi movies ever. It's from coming from a place where it's sort of on the cusp of science reality. So they actually brought in Brian Cox as the science advisor on it, and he does an audio track on the film, explaining the thinking behind the science. It is science fiction. It is a slasher in space, but it's very, very well done. It's one of my favourite science fiction films. In fact, I'll have to do a video about it on its own one day, because it is superb. Super Size Me. First saw that when it first came out. Saw it on TV. Fascinating stuff. Super Bad. Yet to watch that. I really should get around to watching that. Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. Very good, very solid entry from the DC Animation Studios, and yet another another reason why The Killing Joke was such a surprise when I first watched that, when it came out. Superman 1 and 2, very good. Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve does a masterful turn as Superman. And here we have Superman, Man of Steel. Now we'll go to Superman Returns first, because obviously it was followed. This was kind of the follow-up to Superman 1 and 2. coming from a very nice place, a well-meaning place that they hired an actor that looked like a bit like Christopher Reeve. His name escapes me sadly. They got the director in from X-Men. His name escapes me sadly. All the names are disappearing, but it just didn't quite hit home. It felt more like Superman, the mopey stalker, sadly. Although I think Kevin Spacey does quite a good job of trying to be Lex Luthor in it. Superman Man of Steel, good reboot, I think, of the Superman series. Sadly, it hasn't really gone anywhere in terms of the DCEU yet, unfortunately. And that said, though, it was a little bit mopey, a little bit Batman-y. And it's okay for Superman to have a bit more colour, a bit more vibrancy to him, I think. It doesn't have to be, essentially, a superpowered Batman. Superman Doomsday, another solid entry from the DC Animated Studios, telling the story of Doomsday killing Superman, basically. Superman Unbound, another solid entry from the DC Animated Studios, and yet another reason why The Killing Joke was such a letdown. Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, is a film which I took a bit of time to watch, took a bit of time to get to it, because again, I was a bit scared. A bit scared that Tim Burton was gonna do weird things, and he did do weird things, but he did weird things in a wonderful way. It was a vision of the musical that worked, but at the same time also didn't. I think obviously there are better soundtracks out there, the Sweeney Todd musical, but in terms of a movie, it's good. And I also quite like the pies look delicious, even though they're full of all sorts of human bits. And finally, in the S's, we have, before we get into TMNT there, we have Sweet Home Alabama. I love the film, I really do. Again, my soft side coming out there. My wife introduced me to it, a bit like sort of 27 Dresses and all those other ones. She tends to introduce me to, as she puts it, top quality chick flicks. And this one is a top quality chick flick. It's a chick flick that a man can watch. Because there are sort of elements there that you can go along with as a man, but also elements there that just sort of slightly melt your heart as well. And Sweet Home Alabama was one of them. I also quite like the portrayal of the South in that film, and the way it sort of I can relate, because I'm from essentially a part of Britain which is very different to the south of England, which is very sort of stereotypically cold and official, and very overly polite and a bit sort of false. And it's kind of almost like it's inverted in America, where people seem to think that's what the East Coast and New York is like. And so having this sort of duality portrayed in terms of culture, I find very interesting as well. Anyway, there we go. My voice is starting to go. That has been all of the S's, and next we'll go on to the T's when I feel so inclined. The T's are huge, though, because on the backup, for some reason, the website counts the as part of the title. So with any other sensible library, you don't count the thes, because otherwise you have a massive T section. Lots of things have the in it, but for some reason, in this instance, we have all the thes in the T section. So we'll come to the T section next, and then maybe after that, maybe we might be able to fit everything else into one more video. We'll see. This might be 2 videos away from the end. Who knows? Anyway, guys, hopefully this has been interesting. If you haven't seen any of these movies, do check them out, because for the most part I have them because I like them. But they all sort of serve an emotional spectrum purpose. At some point, I want to watch one of them. If I'm bored, or if I just want to see that scene again, or whatever. So I highly recommend most of these, unless I've stated I haven't seen them, in which case don't pin me with that. Anyway, as ever, until next time, do take care. Bye bye.